Hello, my name is Sue Woolfenden, and I'm introducing our paper which will be published in the May 2019 issue of Developmental Medicine and Child Neurology, a study of the impact of social disadvantage on cerebral palsy severity. I am presenting on behalf of my co-authors, Claire Galea, Hayley Smithers-Sheedy, Eve Blair, Sarah McIntyre, Sue Reid, Michael DeLacy, Nadia Badawi, the Australian Cerebral Palsy Register Group, and members of CP Quest. Cerebral palsy is the most common physical disability of childhood. CP is a lifelong condition. The motor limitations in CP range from mild to severe. Common comorbidities include intellectual impairment, epilepsy, lack of communication, blindness, and deafness. Internationally, low neighbourhood and family socioeconomic status and minority ethnicity measures of socioeconomic disadvantage have been associated with comparatively greater severity of CP impairments. This has been the case in Ireland, Korea, Canada, and we were keen to find out if this was the case in Australia. To do this, we use the Australian Cerebral Palsy Register, which exists to facilitate the study of the distribution, frequency and severity of CP, the causes and determinants of CP, the effectiveness of prevention strategies, and to help plan and evaluate services. The Australian Cerebral Palsy Register was established in 2008. It began with the West Australian Register, established in 1977, followed by Victoria and South Australia, and the remaining states and territories between 2004 and 2008. Indicators of CP severity, which was our outcome at 5 years of age in this study, were level of functional motor limitation, defined as a GMFCS score of 4 to 5. In other words, the child was non-ambulant. Level of intellectual impairment, defined as an IQ less than 50. In other words, the child had at least a moderate intellectual disability, and the presence of another severe comorbidity, be that epilepsy, bilateral deafness, blindness, and or non-verbal communication. Participants were children and their families from the 1993 to 2009 birth year cohort, including postneonatal cases from the Australian Cerebral Palsy Register. Our measures of socioeconomic disadvantage at birth included teenage mothers, maternal age of less than 20, maternal minority ethnicity, defined as a maternal country of birth using Australian Bureau of Statistics codes for low and middle income countries, a measure of neighbourhood socioeconomic status at the time of birth using postcode, which is then linked to the indices of relative socioeconomic advantage and disadvantage, the ERSAD. And although we wish to look at data on parental education and occupation, this was insufficient. The reason we wanted to examine the identification of socioeconomic disadvantage as a risk factor for severe CP is that it can inform targeted multi-level approaches to prevention and early intervention. Our study found that there was what's called a social gradient with socioeconomic disadvantage and RCP severity outcomes. In other words, the more disadvantaged in terms of the child, the more likely they were, and their family, the more likely they were to have a more severe CP outcome. First, if we look at this graph, which examines the relationship between neighbourhood socioeconomic status and the proportion of children with a severe CP outcome across GMFCS, IQ, and comorbidity, we can see that across the 5 socioeconomic status quintiles, ranging on the left from quintile 1, which is the lowest socioeconomic status, to quintile 5, which is the highest socioeconomic status, that there is a statistically significant social gradient for all these outcomes. In other words, the more disadvantaged the child is in terms of the more likely they live in a low neighbourhood deprivation, the more likely they are to have a severe CP outcome. If we look at the data in another way, using risk ratios, again, we can see this relationship between a low quintile and a higher likelihood of having a severe CP outcome compared to children in the highest quintile. We can also see that a maternal age of less than 20 and maternal minority ethnicity were also associated with an increased risk that the child would have a severe CP outcome in terms of GMFCS, IQ, and severe comorbidity. This was found to be the relationship of maternal age and maternal minority ethnicity was found on mediation analysis to be independent of neighbourhood socioeconomic status. So in summary, our paper found that in Australia, socioeconomic disadvantage at birth is associated with severe and complex cerebral palsy. This is an important finding as it informs targeted interventions that support children with CP in socioeconomically disadvantaged neighbourhoods and socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. And these interventions we have now found need to be at family and neighbourhood level for us to improve the outcomes of children with CP. We'd like to acknowledge in our study the Australian Cerebral Palsy Registered Group. As listed, our 3 members from CP Quest, BJD Price, Claire Mazelin and Saskia Van Otterloo, and all the families who so generously share their stories with the CP registers across Australia. Thank you.